Hey guys, and welcome to another video, and today we are going to turn a generic $20 fan into a $200 home air filter using very simple tools you can easily do yourself. So let's get into it, shall we? Now you've probably seen this type of box fan everywhere in store. It's really affordable, but by itself it's quite flimsy and unstable, which is probably where all the savings went. However, we can take it to the next level, which can rival the most expensive fans out there by only a few modifications. The first thing we should do is to take a measuring tape and a piece of paper. At the corner of a box fan, there are dead zones where air can be drawn from the front instead of through the back. So we are going to cover these areas to force air from behind the fan. Now take the piece of paper and place it on the side, moving it slowly towards the center until it gets blown by the air. Now mark that point. Now take the measurement from there to the center of the fan, and this will be the radius of your opening. Cut out a circle using the radius both front and back in the actual box it came in. It's that simple. Now, depending on your budget and level of filtration, go to the HVAC aisle and purchase a furnace filter, but make sure it has the metal mesh on one side. The 20 by 20 inch filters work perfectly for the size of the fan. Place the metal mesh towards the fan, and as you can see by the discoloration of the air filter, this version works beautifully. There's so much airflow, and I know it's keeping my lungs super clean. You could tape it down, but the suction of the fan keeps it firmly in place. We could end it here without spending another dime, but if you have a little more extra to spend, let's take it to another level. We'll need to buy some hardboard. You could get pre-cut hardboard if it's easier for you to handle. However, the best value is getting a whole 4 by 8 foot sheet and asking the staff to cut it in half for you. This works out cheaper if you want to have more left over to do more fans. So the headboard will be our new fan cover since it's quite sturdier than cardboard. I'm aiming to have 2 exact squares for both front and back sides. They will both need to be big enough to cover the entire fan. We'll also want to make sure that we'll have a minimum of 2 extra inches of room on all sides, so that later we can attach blocks of wood as support. Now that I have my squares, I draw diagonals from one corner to the opposite corner. This is the quickest way to find the center. To make the perfect circle, I took the radius of the fan measurement we got from before, and with some heavy stock paper, I made some holes on each end. Using a 90-degree pick tool, I use one hole to pivot around while I use a marker through the other hole. Now let's cut out the circle. To save time, I clamped both squares down together to do everything at once. I use a drill as my starting point for my jigsaw. Take your time as the jigsaw will tend to self-propel itself. Use some sandpaper to clean up the rough edges. And now it's time to disassemble the fan. Remove the stands and the plastic grill. Now this grill is mainly held together by some small metal screws on each side. By this time, you'll probably notice the apparent defects of this cheap fan, since there were a lot of factory screws that missed its mark. Also, the screws attaching the motor to the frame was slightly loose, which may have contributed to the huge vibrations you saw earlier. I tightened them here to fix that. Now I know my cuts aren't perfect, so I marked the inside of each square so I know which sides are identical. Here I measure out the center placement of the fan. It doesn't have to be exact, but I'm aiming for it. I use the 90-degree pick tool again to mark the position of every hole the screw needs to go through in each cover. Then I drill through each mark. I bought some longer metal screws to accommodate the grill and the thickness of the hardboard. The ones I bought here are actually a bit long. You can probably get away with 1/2-inch screws instead. I temporarily screwed the cover into the existing holes. This is because I want to align the other side of the cover, so we need to find out the exact position of the screw holes for the other side. And like I mentioned previously, the quality control for this fan is a bit lacking, so the screws aren't in similar places, so that's why I'm doing this one side at a time. I use a square angle to approximately align the boards. We want to get them as flush as possible, as you may want to stand them up on one side. Again, I will carefully use the 90-degree pick tool to mark the position of the existing screw hole mounts on the other board. Here I got so lazy switching out the drill bits, so I just decided to use a screw to make the holes through the board, and it works great. I temporarily screwed the board in again because now we want to make a hole for the power cord. Using a marker, I traced out approximately where I should make a large enough hole. Then I cut a path from the bottom side using a jigsaw for the cord to slip through. Now, let's put everything back together with the original plastic grills. For support, I measure out the space between the boards and cut 2x4 pieces for both sides. The beauty of this is that we can use these sides to mount the fan to any surface. Now for each side, I will measure out the center so we can screw in our 2x4 piece. I'll have the wood pieces stick out about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. This is so that I can mount it flat to a couple of studs later. Here you'll probably notice that I made a paper template to mount the screws. It just helps to make it look more symmetrical. Pre-drilling the holes are totally optional, as I'm just used to drilling first and screwing in to prevent wood ends from cracking. To attach the furnace filter, I bought some metal strapping used for holding pipes. Now, this has 1,000,001 uses, so I do recommend having it in your toolbox. I cut out small pieces with metal shears, and since it's so pliable, I bent them into shapes to hold the filter. Then I mount them using the same screw holes as before. We'll want to be able to switch out the filter easily, so I left one side open to slide them in and out. And finally, what you do from here is totally up to you. Now I'll be using this fan upstairs to draw fresh outside air into the house, so I attached them to 2 studs and leaned it against the window. With the air blowing in, this creates positive air pressure, cycling the filtered air throughout the space. And this probably wasn't a good idea, since a blast of wind knocked it down, scaring the daylights out of me. So it's best not to go cheap if you have children, pets, and the like. So in this case, we're gonna have to build it out even more. I used 2 blocks of wood on each side this time, with fender washers to secure it more structurally. I also built a really solid stand this time, so it won't fall over, and it's much more portable to move around the house. Well, I hope this video has given you some inspiration. Comment below if you like my video, hit that like button, and consider subscribing to this humble YouTube channel. Alright, cheers guys.